Mike O'Sullivan had been running the Cosmic Tap at Nexus Station for 2 years, and in that time, he'd learned that aliens didn't understand the concept of drowning their sorrows. They preferred emotional regulation therapy, chemical mood stabilizers, and what they called logical problem-solving sessions over just sitting at a bar and talking through their troubles, which was why his bar was the emptiest establishment on a station with 50,000 residents. Mike called Commander Rex Nightsong, the station's Andromedian security chief, as he passed by the empty bar during his evening patrol. Perhaps you should consider serving beverages that meet galactic psychological wellness standards instead of whatever this is. Mike looked around his bar-polished wood, soft lighting, vintage earth music playing quietly, and shelves lined with bottles that made aliens uncomfortable. A single customer sat at the far end, nursing what appeared to be synthetic ethanol substitute while staring at nothing. Rex, I've been mixing drinks for 15 years. Good whiskey, proper beer, cocktails that help people relax and open up. Just because aliens prefer getting their emotional support from therapy algorithms doesn't mean conversation and a good drink aren't still the best medicine for most problems. Rex's crystalline features flickered with what Mike had learned indicated diplomatic concern. Mike, your establishment promotes emotional vulnerability through chemical inhibition reduction. Our psychological wellness protocols classify this as potentially harmful coping mechanism encouragement. It's called having a drink and talking to someone who listens. Been working for humans for thousands of years. Through the bar's windows, Mike watched streams of aliens heading to Optimal Mental Health Center across the station. Plaza, a sterile facility where trained counselors provided scientifically validated emotional support through structured therapy sessions. Mike, you have been operating at minimal capacity for 24 months. Perhaps it is time to consider providing psychological services that galactic citizens actually utilize. Mike wiped down his bar with the same care his grandfather had taken in his pub back in Dublin. Rex, my family's been tending bar for 3 generations. We've helped people through heartbreak, job loss, family problems, midlife crisis. Sometimes what folks need isn't professional therapy. It's just someone to listen while they work through what's bothering them. But Mike, no one utilizes your services. That's because no one around here knows that sometimes the best therapy is a friendly ear and a well-made drink. Just then, the bar's only customer, a vegan named Thomas, who came in every evening to sit alone, looked up from his synthetic alcohol with an expression Mike recognized as someone who needed to talk. Human Mike, Thomas said quietly, may I request additional synthetic ethanol substitute? My usual emotional regulation session was ... insufficient today. Mike approached with a bottle of actual whiskey, not the synthetic substitute that most aliens preferred. Thomas's, you've been coming in here every night for 3 weeks, ordering the same fake booze and sitting alone. What's really going on? Thomas's looked at the bottle of real whiskey with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Human Mike, real ethanol consumption is not recommended for vegan physiology according to our medical protocols. A small amount won't hurt you, and it might help you relax enough to talk about whatever's eating at you. Trust me. After a moment of hesitation, Thomas nodded. Mike poured a small measure of smooth Irish whiskey and slid it across the bar. 20 minutes later, Mike watched Thomas's experience something that alien psychological wellness protocols had never provided: the cathartic relief of sharing his problems with someone who listened without judgment while slowly sipping a drink that helped him lower his emotional defenses. Human Mike, Thomas said, his words slightly slurred, but his expression more relaxed than Mike had ever seen. I have been struggling with loneliness since my life partner departed for deep space exploration 6 months ago. The therapy algorithms provide logical coping strategies, but they do not address the emotional emptiness I experience each day. Thomas's, being lonely when someone you love is far away isn't a problem to be solved. It's a feeling to be acknowledged. Missing someone means you care about them. Thomas stared into his whiskey glass. Human Mike, in 63 years of life, no counselor has ever told me that feeling sad about separation was acceptable. They always provide strategies to eliminate the emotional discomfort. Sometimes you're supposed to feel sad, Thomas. means your emotions are working properly. The trick is learning to sit with the feeling instead of trying to make it go away immediately. The next evening, Mike arrived at the Cosmic Tap to find Thomas's waiting outside with 3 other Vegas who introduced themselves as his work colleagues. "Human Mike," Thomas said with more energy than Mike had seen from him since they'd met. "I have shared with my colleagues the concept of productive sadness discussion over ethanol consumption. They wish to experience this alternative emotional processing method." Mike unlocked his bar, surprised by the sudden interest in what he'd always considered basic human emotional support. "Thomas's, you told them about our conversation?" "Human Mike, after our discussion last night, I experienced emotional relief that 6 months of therapy algorithms could not provide. I realized that attempting to eliminate sadness was preventing me from processing the natural grief of missing my life partner." Over the next hour, Mike found himself serving drinks to 4 Vegas while facilitating what was essentially group therapy, helping them understand that emotional pain often needed to be experienced rather than immediately eliminated. "See, this is bourbon," Mike explained to Valona, Thas's colleague, as he poured her a small measure. "It's designed to be sipped slowly, which gives you time to think about what you're feeling instead of trying to fix it immediately." Valona took a careful sip and immediately made a face at the burning sensation, but didn't push the glass away. "Human Mike, this beverage creates physical discomfort. Why would this be beneficial for emotional processing?" "Because sometimes dealing with emotional pain requires accepting a little discomfort. The burn reminds you to go slow, to think about what you're feeling, instead of rushing to make it go away." Dr. Kira Starweaver, the station's head psychologist, entered the bar during this impromptu therapy session and observed the proceedings with scientific puzzlement. "Human Mike, you are conducting unlicensed psychological counseling while administering substances that reduce cognitive inhibitions. This represents multiple violations of mental health safety protocols." "Doc, I'm not doing therapy. I'm just listening to people talk about their problems while serving drinks that help them relax enough to be honest about what they're feeling." Human Mike, facilitating honesty about feelings through chemical disinhibition, is classified as amateur psychological intervention. Professional emotional support requires trained counselors and validated therapeutic techniques. Mike looked around his bar, where 4 Vegas were engaged in the first genuine emotional conversation they'd had in months, sharing feelings they'd been trying to eliminate instead of process. "Doc, these folks have been getting professional therapy for months, and they're still miserable. Sometimes what people need isn't professional intervention. It's just human connection and permission to feel what they're feeling." By closing time, the Vegas had worked through emotional issues that months of algorithmic therapy hadn't addressed. They were planning to return the following evening and had asked if they could bring friends who are struggling with similar problems. "Human Mike," Thomas said as he prepared to leave, "your method of emotional acknowledgement with social support has provided more relief than any professional psychological service I have utilized." Thomas's, "All I did was listen and give you permission to feel sad about missing someone you love. Sometimes the cure for emotional problems isn't eliminating the emotions, it's accepting them as natural responses to difficult situations." The next morning, Dr. Starweaver returned to Mike's bar with news that concerned him. "Mike, the Galactic Mental Health Board will be conducting an investigation into your establishment. Reports indicate that you are providing unlicensed emotional support services that may interfere with proper psychological treatment protocols." Mike started prepping his bar for the evening shift, thinking about the Vegas who had finally found relief from months of emotional pain through simple human connection and honest conversation. "Doc, what kind of investigation?" Inspector Nexus, MinLogic specializes in identifying unauthorized psychological intervention practices. He has shut down multiple establishments for providing amateur emotional support without proper certification. So they're gonna shut me down for listening to people's problems. "Mike, if Inspector MinLogic determines that your bar is functioning as an unlicensed therapy facility, he will not only close your establishment, he will ban human emotional support methods throughout this sector." Inspector Nexus MinLogic arrived 2 days later with a team of psychological compliance officers, mental health analysts, and therapeutic protocol specialists. He was a tall, angular Centaurian whose neural interfaces blinked with constant data processing and whose expression conveyed absolute dedication to mental health regulatory standards. Mike's bar was busier than it had been since opening Vegas. Andromedians, and even a few Arcturians, had begun coming to experience what they were calling emotional honesty facilitation through social ethanol consumption. Human Mike O'Sullivan, Inspector Mindlogic announced, his voice carrying the mechanical precision of someone who thought in therapeutic protocols. I am conducting a comprehensive evaluation of your establishment's compliance with galactic mental health safety standards. Initial observations suggest you are providing unlicensed psychological services. Inspector, I'm just running a bar. People come in, order drinks, talk about their problems. It's what bartenders have been doing for centuries. That is precisely the violation, Human Mike. Unlicensed emotional counseling, combined with cognitive inhibition substances, creates dangerous conditions for psychological harm. Inspector Mindlogic began his evaluation by analyzing Mike's methods, immediately expressing concern about the lack of structured therapeutic protocols, absence of professional psychological training, and what his scanner identified as dangerously unregulated emotional vulnerability encouragement. Human Mike, you allow customers to discuss personal problems without proper therapeutic framework. This free-form emotional expression can lead to psychological destabilization and inappropriate emotional dependence. Inspector, people feel better after talking about their problems. That's not psychological harm. That's normal human emotional processing. Human emotional processing is primitive and unregulated. Human Mike, advanced civilizations recognize that proper mental health requires structured therapeutic intervention to prevent emotional chaos. Mike watched Inspector Mindlogic examine his bar setup, his conversation areas, and his approach to customer interaction with growing regulatory disapproval. Each element, from comfortable seating arrangements to soft lighting to his willingness to listen without judgment, was documented as a mental health safety violation. Human Mike, your establishment environment is specifically designed to encourage emotional vulnerability. You provide alcohol to reduce psychological defenses, create intimate social settings to promote personal disclosure, and offer non-professional emotional support to individuals in psychological distress. Inspector, my customers are adults who choose to come here. They're not in distress. They're dealing with normal life problems like loneliness, relationship issues, work stress. Sometimes they just need someone to listen. Loneliness, relationship difficulties, and occupational stress are classified mental health conditions requiring professional treatment. Human Mike, amateur emotional support can worsen these conditions by preventing proper therapeutic intervention. Just then, Thomas's entered with what had become his regular Group 12. Vegas, who had been coming nightly to experience what they called Mike's emotional honesty sessions. Human Mike, Thomas is called. We have brought additional colleagues who wish to learn about productive sadness processing and social emotional support. Inspector Mindlogic observed the group with growing alarm. Human Mike, these individuals are demonstrating classic symptoms of therapeutic dependency. They return repeatedly for emotional support, rely on your amateur counseling for psychological stability, and have developed social rituals around alcohol consumption. Inspector, they're not dependent. They're just learning that it's okay to feel emotions instead of trying to eliminate them immediately. Acceptance of negative emotions without professional therapeutic guidance is psychologically dangerous. Human Mike, I am prepared to issue immediate closure orders for this establishment. But before Inspector Mindlogic could complete his regulatory documentation, Dr. Starweaver approached with data that complicated his assessment. Inspector Mindlogic, I have been monitoring the psychological wellness indicators of individuals who regularly frequent Human Mike's establishment. Dr. Starweaver, amateur emotional support cannot produce legitimate therapeutic benefits. Inspector, the data suggests otherwise. Regular customers show decreased anxiety levels, improved social connectivity, enhanced emotional resilience, and reduced utilization of professional mental health services. Reduced utilization of professional services indicates avoidance of proper treatment, not psychological improvement. Inspector, what if the customers no longer need professional services because they have learned healthy emotional processing skills through social support. Over the next week, something unprecedented happened at Nexus Station. Aliens who had never spoken to each other began gathering at the Cosmic Tap to share emotional experiences, learn about human approaches to dealing with life problems, and discover that professional therapy wasn't the only way to process difficult feelings. Dr. Starweaver addressed Inspector Menlogic with research findings that challenged standard mental health protocols. Inspector, I have documented significant improvements in community mental health since Human Mike's Bar became popular. Rather than creating psychological dependency, it appears to be teaching emotional self-reliance and social support skills. Dr. Starweaver, improvements in amateur emotional support cannot override professional therapeutic standards. Inspector, what if Human Mike's methods are not amateur therapy, but cultural education in emotional processing techniques that our advanced therapeutic protocols inadvertently eliminated? Commander Rex Nightsong provided security data that further supported the bar's positive impact. Inspector Menlogic, since Human Mike's establishment became a community gathering space, we have documented a 34% decrease in psychological distress calls, reduced incidents of social isolation, and improved interspecies emotional understanding. Commander Nightsong, statistical improvements do not override mental health safety regulations, but the most compelling testimony came from the aliens themselves. One by one, customers shared how Mike's Bar had helped them learn to process emotions naturally, develop genuine friendships, and handle life problems without immediate professional intervention. Thomas's spoke for his vegan community. Inspector, Human Mike taught us that sadness about separation from loved ones is natural and healthy. Before learning this, I spent months trying to eliminate feelings that were actually appropriate responses to my situation. Thelana added, Inspector Menlogic, Mike's Bar helped me understand that talking about work stress with friends is more effective than algorithmic stress management protocols. I learned that emotional problems often resolve through social connection rather than professional intervention. Even species that had never entered the bar joined the discussion, arguing that the concept of emotional honesty through social support represented valuable cultural knowledge that transcended regulatory concerns. Inspector, said Dr. Nex, a Plutonian researcher, I have observed that Human Mike's customers develop emotional resilience and social skills that professional therapy cannot provide. They learn to support each other rather than depending on external therapeutic services. Inspector Menlogic found himself facing not a mental health safety violation, but a community movement centered around the idea that emotional problems could be addressed through social support rather than only professional intervention. Citizens, I understand your testimonies, but galactic mental health regulations exist to protect individuals from harmful psychological practices. Amateur emotional support creates risks that professional therapy prevents. Mike, who had been listening to his customers defend his simple approach to bartending with growing amazement, stepped forward to address Inspector Menlogic directly. Inspector, my grandfather ran a pub in Dublin for 40 years. He helped people through divorces, job losses, family deaths, financial problems. He wasn't a therapist. He was someone who listened without judgment and helped people understand that their problems were normal and manageable. Human Mike, personal family traditions do not override galactic mental health standards. Inspector, look around this room. Do you see psychological dependency? Or do you see community? Do you see people avoiding professional help? Or do you see folks who learned they could handle normal life problems with support from friends? Inspector Menlogic looked around the bar, where aliens were engaged in genuine emotional conversations, offering mutual support and demonstrating psychological resilience that clearly exceeded what professional therapy alone had provided. After extensive community testimony, psychological data analysis, and regulatory review, Inspector Menlogic faced a mental health compliance situation that his training had not prepared him to address. Human Mike, he said slowly, your methods clearly violate established therapeutic safety protocols. However, the community data suggests that these violations may produce psychological benefits that standard regulations do not account for. So, what happens now, Inspector? I am prepared to offer a regulatory accommodation. Your establishment may continue operating under experimental social-emotional support protocols, provided that you implement educational components that help customers understand the distinction between social support and professional therapy. Mike looked around his bar full of aliens who had learned that normal life problems could be addressed through friendship, honest conversation, and mutual emotional support. What kind of educational components? You would be required to offer workshops that teach healthy social emotional support skills, while clarifying when professional therapeutic intervention is necessary. Customers would learn both self-reliance and appropriate help-seeking behaviors. Commander Rex stepped forward with administrative enthusiasm. Inspector, the station could establish a community emotional wellness center, with Human Mike serving as instructor for social support skill development. The educational component would satisfy regulatory requirements while preserving the community benefits that have been documented. Inspector Mindlogic agreed. Human Mike would become an official social emotional support specialist. Mike considered the offer, realizing he was being asked to teach an entire galactic community something that humans had known for millennia. That sometimes the best therapy is a good friend and honest conversation. Inspector, would I still be able to run my bar? The bar would become a working laboratory for social emotional support education, serving beverages that facilitate appropriate emotional openness while providing community space for peer support activities. And people could learn that they don't need professional therapy for every life problem. The program would teach emotional self-reliance skills and community support techniques that reduce inappropriate dependence on professional therapeutic services. Mike looked around his bar, where aliens were already forming friendship groups, sharing emotional support strategies, and learning that many psychological problems could be resolved through social connection rather than professional intervention. Inspector, I accept your accommodation, but I want everyone to understand the most important thing about emotional support, which is, most life problems are normal and manageable. You don't need professional therapy for every difficult feeling sometimes. You just need a friend who listens, honest conversation about what's bothering you, and the understanding that emotional pain usually gets better with time and support. 1 year after Inspector Mindlogic's regulatory accommodation, the Cosmic Tap had evolved into the Nexus Station Community Emotional Wellness Center, with Mike serving as head instructor for what had become the most successful mental health program in the sector. All right, everyone, Mike called to his current workshop group of 42 aliens representing 16 different species. Today we're learning about the difference between problems that need professional help and problems that can be handled with good friends and honest conversation. The workshop space combined his original bar with classroom areas where aliens learned social emotional support skills, appropriate help-seeking behaviors, and the crucial distinction between normal life stress and serious mental health conditions. Thomas, who had become Mike's assistant instructor, helped a group of Centaurian participants understand the concept of productive emotional processing. Sometimes feeling sad or stressed is appropriate, Thomas explained. Having learned this wisdom through months of Mike's guidance, the goal is not to eliminate all negative emotions, but to process them naturally with social support. In the workshop corner, Velana taught young aliens from various species how to provide peer emotional support, explaining that friends could help each other through normal life problems without professional training. Human Mike taught us that listening without trying to fix everything is often the most helpful response. Velana demonstrated, showing how to offer emotional validation rather than immediate solutions. Sometimes people need understanding more than advice. Mike moved through the workshop, teaching skills that went beyond bartending, active listening, emotional validation, community building, and the wisdom to know when problems require professional intervention versus social support. Dr. Starweaver called a Plutonian workshop participant. This social emotional support training is helping me understand that many of my psychological service requests were for normal life stress that friends could have helped me address. Dr. Starweaver, who had enrolled in Mike's program to better understand the community mental health phenomenon, found herself learning emotional support skills that her professional training had never covered. Human Mike has demonstrated that many mental health concerns can be addressed through community support and emotional self-reliance education rather than professional therapeutic intervention. The success of Mike's program had attracted attention throughout the galactic mental health community. Station administrators, psychological researchers, and even therapeutic protocol designers were requesting consultation on implementing similar programs at their facilities. Mike, Inspector MindLogic, announced during a program review session, "I have received communications from mental health authorities in 23 sectors requesting community emotional wellness programs. The Galactic Mental Health Board wants to discuss integrating your social support methodology into standard psychological services." Mike paused in his demonstration of conflict resolution skills to consider what Inspector MindLogic was telling him. "Inspector, that sounds like trying to turn friendship into a professional service." "Mike, your program has demonstrated that social emotional support can reduce inappropriate utilization of professional therapeutic services while improving overall community psychological wellness. So they want to systematize what I've been teaching. They want you to develop standardized curricula for social emotional support education that could supplement professional mental health services throughout galactic civilization." Mike looked around his workshop, where aliens were learning to listen to each other, provide mutual emotional support, and understand that many life problems could be resolved through friendship rather than professional intervention. "Inspector, I'm honored, but the most important thing about emotional support is that it's genuine. Every community, every friendship, every family has their own way of caring for each other. I can teach basic skills, but real emotional support has to come from authentic relationships. What would you recommend for program expansion?" "Train community members to support each other using their own cultural approaches to friendship and mutual care. I can provide basic principles, listen without judgment, validate feelings, know when to suggest professional help, but each community needs to develop their own support networks." 3 years after Mike O'Sullivan first served real whiskey to a lonely vegan and listened to his problems, the community emotional wellness movement had spread throughout the galactic sector, with over 500 certified social emotional support centers, teaching communities that many life problems could be addressed through friendship, honest conversation, and mutual support rather than immediate professional intervention. Mike maintained his home base at Nexus Station, but traveled regularly to consultation assignments, helping communities develop their own social emotional support networks and establish healthy balances between professional therapy and peer emotional assistance. "Mike," Commander Rex announced during their quarterly program review, "the Galactic Mental Health Board has officially integrated social emotional support education into standard psychological services. Your teaching methodology is now supplementing professional therapy programs on over 1,500 worlds." Mike looked around his facility, where the original bar still operated alongside workshop spaces, support group meeting areas, and community gathering places where aliens came to practice the art of genuine friendship and mutual emotional care. "Rex, the most important thing is that people are learning they can help each other through normal life problems. That feeling difficult emotions is natural, and that community support is just as important as professional services." Through the windows, Mike could see aliens throughout the station engaged in peer emotional support activities, meeting in friendship groups for mutual assistance, and teaching their children that emotional problems were often best addressed through social connection and community care. Thomas is approached with his weekly report on program expansion. "Human Mike, we have received requests from communities throughout the outer territories. They have heard about the balance between professional therapy and social support and wish to learn community emotional wellness methods." Thomas, what do you think is the most important thing we've accomplished here? "Human Mike, we have helped communities understand that professional therapy and social support can work together. At many emotional problems are normal life challenges that friends can help address, and that every individual deserves both professional mental health resources and genuine community emotional support. And the most important lesson for new communities? That effective emotional support requires authentic caring, good listening skills, and the wisdom to know when problems need professional help versus when they can be addressed through friendship and mutual understanding." Mike smiled, thinking about his grandfather's pub in Dublin, where people had been working through life's problems over good drinks and honest conversation for generations. He had become the O'Sullivan who brought the healing power of genuine community to the galaxy. As aliens throughout Nexus Station gathered for evening social support activities, sharing problems with trusted friends, offering mutual emotional assistance, and maintaining healthy balances between professional services and peer support, Mike reflected on the simple truth that had started it all. Most life problems are normal and manageable, and sometimes the best therapy is a good friend who listens without judgment. Some wisdom is universal, even across the stars.